So I wanted to talk tonight about tranquility, calm, peace, and its role in practice. Samadhi, which is greater than concentration. The idea of concentration doesn't begin to cover what samadhi is in a meditation practice. Although it's used all the time, the word concentration. Oh, it'll help us concentrate. It'll do this, it'll do that. But samadhi, when we gather the mind together and we're relaxed and alert, has so many other qualities. There's ethical considerations in samadhi. There's a kind of flexibility of the mind. There's a creative sensitivity in the mind. There's a lot of factors that are made up and actually have been delineated in the text. Concentration, you can be a second-story burglar or an assassin and you can have great concentration, but that's not samadhi. A person in samadhi is incapable of harming anybody. It just isn't there. It's just not accessible. So, the last dozen years or so, I've been very interested in these, what are called meditative absorptions and jhanas, and I'll describe them just briefly a little later. But these are samadhi practices, tranquility practices, serenity practices. They all kind of fall under that umbrella. So let's look at what the goals of are, for a meditation practice. Okay? It's helpful to reflect from time to time, well, what's the point of this? Well, we're cultivating in two areas, and they're interpenetrating areas. The heart. We're cultivating a capacity for greater and greater compassion, a greater and greater capacity to feel into another and respond to suffering and to respond to our own suffering. So there's a whole element around developing the capacity of the heart. And there's the whole area of wisdom, the capacity of being able to see clearly in whatever situation it is, whether it's something kind of down to earth in our life, a relationship or a problem or a project that we're working on, to see clearly, and out of that seeing clearly, act in skillful ways. Part of being skillful is not harming. I mean, there's a whole, we can discuss a lot about what skillful is and what skillful isn't. So we're developing these two wings, the two wings of the bird or the practice that flies. We've got a development of the heart and greater and greater compassion, and the development of our wisdom faculties, our ability to, out of this calm, and this is where this calm and tranquility comes from, out of a developing calm and tranquility, out of that relaxation, we're able to see more clearly. Out of that meditative state or calm that we can create in our lives, which you could say is an altered state in a way. Out of that, there's more creativity that's accessed. There's clearer thinking. There's the ability to look at the greater spiritual questions. What is the self? What's not the self? How do I suffer? Etc. So we can approach this practice, I just want to reduce the stress. That's fine. And we've talked about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system here. That the sympathetic nervous system, we know more and more about this now with science, is the part of the nervous system that responds to threat. It has to do with, survival first and foremost. It's on a hair trigger. There's a whole physiological reaction that happens that's been measured out. The heart increases, the respiration increases, our pupils kind of dilate, the blood is removed from the surface of the skin in case a wound is going to happen, our muscles are engorged with blood and ready to go. There's a whole bunch of things. The problem being is that it's on a hair trigger and it goes off more often than is healthy for us. So we wear down and we get sick. But in practices like this, we're strengthening the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxation response, the regulatory response, that is not on a hair trigger. It's natural, it comes on, but the sympathetic nervous system is much more powerful. So anything we can do to enhance that relaxation response is going to be to our benefit, our health, and support our capacity to act more skillfully if we're coming out of that regulated space as opposed to the traumatized space. So there's that on the very basic surface. Okay, we can be more relaxed. Now I'm going to digress a little bit to talk about a little bit of the Buddhist story and how this tranquility, this emphasis on tranquility was kind of, through his direct experience, how that was, how it became an essential part of spiritual practice in terms of Buddhism and other practices too. So as you know, or I'm not going to tell the whole story, but when he left the palace in his opulent lifestyle to seek what he could learn and understand about what is this all about. At that time in India, there were lots of roaming ascetics and teachers, and he studied with a number of them. And he did study with some ascetics, and he participated in some really rigorous practices. Some of them, when you read about them, you can't believe them, and there's some obviously some hyperbole in there. But something like starting out eating 50 grains of rice one day, and the next day you eat 49, and then the next day 48. And you go down to 1, and then you work yourself up to 50 again, and that's all you consume. So there was a lot of people that felt that this kind of mortification of the body was the way to spiritual freedom. That if you could subdue the body, take full control of it, and it might have entailed kind of strapping yourself into a sitting position, or standing up, or not sleeping for as long as you could. Very rigorous ascetic practices. So the Buddha was right into it. And came, according to the story, very close to death. And as he was wasting away with these practices, giving it everything he could, tremendous determination and capacity to put himself through this, he flashed on a time when he was a child. He was like 10 or 11 years old, and it was springtime. And his father was the local kind of chieftain of the clan. And they always had these kind of fertility festival or plowing festivals where they put the first plow into the ground. And it was a big event. Everybody came out. And so this was going on, and his father expected, all the family members to kind of be there. Well, he had been placed for a while underneath this tree, a rose apple tree, as the story goes. And he was just sitting there, and he fell into, it was a beautiful day. His heart was light and open. There was joy, happiness, relaxation. He was 10 or 11. And so he falls into this meditative absorption. And he remembers as he's wasting away with these ascetic practices, he remembers that day when he first had this opening as a child. And it was very natural. And he went into this very deep but pleasant, it was happy, there was joy, there was good feeling in his body. And he remembered, you know, that is the more appropriate course. This mortification is not it. So, from that, he began to eat. He accepted food from people, regained his health, and the middle path was then kind of developed. You take care of your body, you get enough sleep, you still work and practice diligently. He began to study some other practices. He kind of moved away from mortification and those ascetic practices. And he began to study some of these. He found some other teachers that taught him these meditative absorptions, which were, we now know them, there are 8 of them. The first 4 I'll describe very briefly. The first one is a very relaxed state, but there is a kind of energetic flow in the body that's very rapturous, you know, more pleasurable, or it is described by many as more pleasurable than orgasm. The mind is joyful. Then they get more subtle. The body kind of calms down. The rush of that energy kind of calms down, and then it's just a mental happiness, and it's what's known as the second jhana. The third jhana gets even more subtle, where there's still happiness in the mind, but it recedes and contentment fills the field. I always like to describe it as, it's like you've worked a really hard day, the sheets are clean, you've taken a shower, you slip in between there, and it's like you don't want anything. There's no grasping for or pushing away. It's just the way it should be. And the fourth jhana, contentment kind of fades, and there's this deep, deep equanimity, really deep, such that there's no movement towards or away from anything. There's like this deep peace. So, the Buddha, as he learned these, he also realizes that wasn't the end game. Just getting peaceful and quiet and stress-free sounds pretty good, though, right? I mean, but that wasn't the end game. The end game was then taking that capacity, that alert, calm tranquility, and aiming it towards a particular contemplation. And what he would have his monks and nuns aim it at is the bigger spiritual questions. You know, how do I suffer? Why do I suffer? What's the nature of suffering? What's the nature of impermanence? What's the nature of self? All of that. So that's just a little historical background in how the Buddha kind of moved away from, it was very popular, those ascetic practices, and came to a more middle way. And also saw that the foundation for wisdom was this calm tranquility, this lightness, this joy that can be practiced. So tonight, what I tried to support was that calming, that relaxation, that, and the smile has its place in there. Now, I'm not sure if the Buddha taught that exactly, but Thich Nhat Hanh teaches it. A lot of teachers have found it to be really helpful. We want to get away from the heavy kind of grinding. You know, this is light. This is We want the practice to support a heart that wants to be open, that wants to have joy. It's that kind of mind and heart that is much more available to our internal wisdom, to understanding things at a more profound level. So I've really gotten a lot of enjoyment out of these various practices. So you could say that they are these tranquility practices. Some people call them concentration practices. You'll hear them like that. In fact, I'm teaching a course up at IMS in December, and somehow it got named, I think it's a concentration course. But in the first night, I'll say, no, this isn't what it is. But we will be developing Samadhi. So that's not the end-all for the practice, but it is the foundation. Developing that relaxed, calm, tranquility allows our capacity to discover all kinds of insights. Practical, day-to-day, how to fix your carburetor, all the way to the big spiritual questions. And so this little repetition thing that I had going, or that I was trying to get across, really works in day-to-day practices. Okay, you're working on something, you're on a project, your mind wanders away, because that's what it does, especially if you're in front of a computer. There's lots of things that, so okay, you recognize, the mind is off somewhere. You recognize it using the mindfulness. You release. Relax. Smile. And then attend to your project. You're coming at it with a much lighter heart. A more open, relaxed mind. For a moment, we've drained a little bit of tension out of the game. So it's not just a practice for the cushion. We can do this as we go through the day, noticing where the mind moves to and what it grasps onto. And there really is, if we pay attention, when the mind grasps onto something, it can be the most wonderful thing in the world. There's some tension there. And there's some tightness that happens. That's very different than when we purposefully kind of unfurl our claws and just let it be there, whatever it is, wonderful or horrific. Just let it be there. Relax intentionally. Smile. And begin again. So it's some simple things to do, and it has a capacity to release tension, make us a little happier, and actually have us function better and understand more. And it's natural to like the Buddha fell into that as a child. And maybe if you reflect, you can think about times in your life where there's just been something happened or switched, or you had that moment where there was this kind of deep relaxation, the alertness, the calm, the kind of sweep of energy and joy. Children, I think, often have this. I can think when I was a kid, they used to lock me in my room because I was a sleepwalker. I've noticed that some people have just written some books and done some research on it. NPR's had a number of things on sleepwalkers. And so they used to lock me in my room because I'd go out and do stuff. But what happened was there was this lamp in my room, and I can still see it, and it still comes to me sometimes when I'm meditating. And there was a little brass knob on it. And I would lie there, and I would look at that brass knob. I kind of liked it. And that would kind of elicit this kind of, from being locked in the room, a kind of, I don't think I was dissociating, because it was very pleasant and joyful, and I was there. And then it would kind of drop into one of those states, and maybe you probably can remember moments like that in your life, but that was a organized formal meditation my parents put me into. So I really want you to see meditation practice as not some kind of drudgery, that the practice is around relaxation and it's around lightening the heart. And so there are ways that we can emphasize that. I think I'm going to try to plan a day long in October for here, where we'll practice that all day in some various forms. Talk about it in more detail. So, questions, comments about any of the instructions or your experience or anything? Yes?
I was getting stuck a little bit on whether I was smiling the right way. And it was distracting.
Well, I've been noticing you smiling while I've been talking. It's a great smile. So.
I smile quite a lot.
Right.
In my work, I mostly am on email. I'm almost never on the telephone. And I find myself just like very cheerily interacting with people just as I'm writing things. But I was distracted by that. And this is my second time here, and I'm very new to this. And I appreciate the guided meditation for that reason. So I could feel, letting my face go, relaxing, and things that make me smile, rather than just smiling. I was focusing, like, I love when my kids on wrestle, and so
Yeah.
focusing on that, rather than just sort of the physical act. And I'm sort of asking if that is right or wrong, and I expect your answer is there isn't a particular right or wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Eliciting that uplifting feeling is great. Now, we don't want to be off on a 20-minute watching the dogs wrestle.
Yeah.
But utilizing things like that. And I remember the first meditative absorption course that I went on. It was a 30-day course, and we were kind of aiming ourselves to try. And one of the instructions was, okay, think of something that's joyful. And there are other instructions. I just gave some tonight. But yeah, conjuring up something, but then not like lingering in it forever, but just getting the spark
and
there.
Isolating that feeling.
And then just feeling the feeling that's there. Good. Yes.
I love the idea of focusing on a smile. And I realize, though, that I really had to keep it more in the internal smile, because smiling is working the muscles. And I
Right.
realized that my face was really tense with
Yeah.
the physical smile, and
Yeah.
I had to move away from the physical smile to more of the gentle internal feeling of smile.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. I mean, I started out with bring a smile to the mind. Now, what in the world is that? It's like anything you could think of. I sometimes like to think of it kind of like a cascade down through the body, that like Niagara Falls kind of a smile. Yeah.
I found it fascinating and kind of unexpected, but when I went into the smile state, I found my experience changed quite dramatically from to being much more kind of enveloped and wrapped in warmth and in a kind of a cloistered place where my mind was it was much easier to concentrate and on the breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to the relaxed state, I was more in this open sky, anything possible with all the distractions that come along with it. And that happened repeatedly. I just thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually, in the instructions, it is important to go through the relaxation and the smile. The relaxation is there because of that tension that can build from thinking or the mind grasping. And a lot of people will say, oh, I meditated and I just got tighter and tighter. I just can't do it for more than 5 minutes, you know. Well, what happens is the mind's going out and there's some tension there. And then you yank it back to your object of meditation, your breath. So you're bringing a little tension back. And then you bring back some more. And then you bring back some more. And pretty soon you're like crawling with ants. And you're done. You have to get up. So if you can remember to like, okay, the mind's out there, it's grasped onto something, because that's what it does. It's trying to survive. It's trying to check everything out and make sure that we're covered, you know, that we've got food, shelter, whatever we need. But if we can watch that mind and then notice it, oh, it's grasped on, now I'm going to just release. And now I'm going to re-relax, and it could bring out all kinds of things. And I'm going to smile. And then go back to it. We've kind of discharged, or attempted to discharge that tension that we're bringing back if we're yanking it back. Oh, where's my breath? Damn it, I can't do this. My mind keeps wandering. Well, so what? Each time it wanders, we get a chance to relax and smile. What could be better than that? You know? So if that's all we're doing is learning to watch this wild puppy run around and then release, you know, relax and re-smile. That's great. You know, we're just going to feel better. We're going to get a little rest. Rick.
I have a friend who was at UVA, and she has a little bear that winds up and starts laughing. So one of us having a bad day, we get together and we just sit with the Jeff, and she'll just turn the bear on. It takes about 5 seconds and just roll it, you know.
Right.
And then afterwards, all we do is just talk about what they've done. This studies, the brain and how laughter
Yeah.
impacts the brain.
Yeah.
How positive
Yeah.
it is. And once you, I did it once on a group that does public speaking. We have a humor session and we talk for 3 minutes about humor. I just started laughing. And there's 20 people in the room, and they all just started laughing.
Right. Right. It's like that exercise. If we all lay down in a circle and you put your head on somebody's belly and one person laughs and it just rips right around the whole room. So, yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the kind of attitude we want to approach this with, you know. And sure, some heavy stuff comes up and sometimes we get totally identified with it and we, you know, and we have to work with it as best we can.
Did you consider making your thing in October a week long?
Well, actually, I'm thinking of doing trying to work out the logistics to try to teach something like that every year for at least a long weekend. So, yeah, I will consider that.
I was suffering the opposite problem because I was way too relaxed. I just felt it was interesting because I don't think I've been here before we've done that particular instruction, and I found I was just like really floppy and
the breath was gone.
lazy and gone. Like I could not concentrate at all. It was the relax and the smile and the relax, and I just it was so strange. It was very strange. It was clearly a response to the instruction, but it was sort of problematic for me in the opposite direction.
Yeah. Well, this is like riding a bicycle. I mean, we're looking for the relaxed, tranquil, calm, and we're looking for the alertness at the same time. And if the alertness drops off, then that's what happens. But you got that down. So it's just a matter of, you know, noticing when that's dropped off and seeing what can be done. Maybe bringing up a little more interest in the breath, like where's the breath? How can I really, what does it really mean to connect with the breath or to embrace it, or what's new about it that I haven't discovered, or something, or open the eyes, or, you know. Yeah. And sometimes we got all the alertness and the calm isn't there, and then we're anxious. We know what that's like. Well, it's 9 o'clock. Have a tranquil evening, what's left of it.